So let's bring in our first guest. Justin Gibson is going to join us now. Justin, thanks for being here as a part of the podcast. Listen, there is so much to get into tonight and to talk about because, as we said, we don't have anything final, but it looks like right now, the way that everything is trending, everything is kind of projected to move forward, that we would expect to see Biden more than likely take this probably sometime tomorrow. What say you?
Yeah, I don't really want to call anything too soon because they are still counting votes. It could swing a lot of different directions. I think it's kind of irresponsible to say anything definitively until all the votes are in, which is why it's important to count all the votes. So so there is a lot of criticism to be levied at pollsters. I don't think it has anything to do with like they're intentionally lying about things or they're intentionally trying to like skew the results of the direction of the election in the direction they want it to go. I think it has more to do with like polls are very, very hard to conduct and they're very hard to correct for things that weight polls in weird directions. Like you could easily make the argument that like polls that are heavily favoring Biden are actually more beneficial to Trump because they encourage people to stay at home. So yeah, absolutely, the polling is not going to be. I think it's wise to be skeptical and not trust polls in terms of who's going to win an election. I think there are much better tools to like understand like what issues are important. But as far as like the election being stolen, I haven't seen any credible evidence, especially on like a large scale, that this election is being tampered with in any meaningful way. A lot of the evidence, I think people are just like really, really searching for any possible thing that could mean that they've been cheated out of their vote. Like bringing up that Republicans are being given Sharpies at the poll, like that's a nonsense story. Like they're not letting people break into offices they're not letting random citizens break into polling counting offices. I don't see how this is any sort of evidence. Like I would have to see an investigation done, and I'm confident that if they did one, it would turn out like the last investigation Trump did into voter fraud.
So can we talk about a couple of those? You mentioned about the Sharpie thing. For folks who don't know what that is, in Arizona, I believe it is, Republicans were concerned because they claimed that they were being given a Sharpie and that it doesn't make enough of a mark to actually count the ballot. That, by the way, according to the Secretary of State's office in Arizona, is not true. Sharpies are among the devices that are used in order to mark the ballots. Pens, pencils, Sharpies. So you're fine there. But you said something about people not breaking in. What was that comment?
All right, so a lot of people were sharing this story. Ben Shapiro tweeted it out, and I saw a lot of right-wing media personalities tweeting this out. Like they were covering up like windows into the polling places so that the random citizens couldn't look in and monitor the polling places. Which you saw that. Like you saw the video of that, right? Videos are usually taken with cameras. I'm not an AV expert over here, but that means there are cameras and things in that polling place, inside of it. And there are a lot of actual dedicated officials. We don't want random citizens breaking in to monitor the election process. We want an actual dedicated task force to do that, and we have that. So until things like you can't, I think it's a little bit of like, I get it. We're all stressed out. We're all freaking out. Everybody's freaking out on all sides. I get it, but you can't be, this is very, very harmful for trusting the integrity of the election, and stuff like this does not help. You cannot do baseless speculation like this in order to declare that your side got cheated out of this.
Sure. Let me ask you this. Based upon what we have seen in terms of the overall numbers that are coming in, the numbers are pretty staggering. There are a lot of votes. But it is true, now I'm not saying it's nefarious, but it is true that we were watching the votes come in. They were being counted. They did freeze all of a sudden. And some of these votes are taking an awful long time to come in. I mean, what's happening in Georgia, and by the way, I speak about Georgia as someone who lives in Georgia, right? So I live in Cobb County. It's one of the counties that's being counted here. DeKalb is another one. Fulton County is another. Those numbers, according to the Secretary of State of Georgia this morning, he said, hey, by the end of the day, don't worry. We'll have all those numbers in. Easy, no problem. They're still not in. This is an area where there shouldn't be that many votes left to come in when we're already at something like 95% votes counted. So does that give people pause? Does that create concern for voters, especially as you said, because everyone's tense as it is, everyone's kind of heightened at this point, but is there reason to be concerned when it's taking so long, when you get to a 95 or 96% and you sit there for 24 hours?
I think going in, we knew that this was like an unprecedented election where so many people were using mail-in ballots, so many people were doing early voting, and it was going to be a difficult process. Like I remember going into this election, we were like fully expecting it might take days or even weeks to get every single vote fully counted. That's a process that I was completely prepared for. I'm really surprised that we know as much as we do now, the day after the election. So I wouldn't be concerned about it. Like this isn't like a basketball game or something like where we're scoring points or scoring points and like if a team suddenly scores 20 points in the last 10 seconds, it must be a sign of cheating. No, that's not how it works. All these votes have been cast. No more new votes are being cast. It just takes a while to count them effectively. So I'm not. I mean, I get it. I'm concerned about everything, every single tweet. I've been doom scrolling for the past 2 days. I think a lot of us can share that concern, but no, I wouldn't be concerned about it. Like, and we also knew that a lot of these the late votes were going to come from people who were going to be more favorably, that were going to be more inclined to vote for Biden. I mean, if you have a party and a president who are saying that mail-in voting is just be full of fraud, turns out that's going to discourage a lot of Republican voters from doing mail-in voting, and they're going to show up more in person. I mean, we knew that going in. None of this is like incredibly unprecedented. None of this is completely out of the ordinary. So, well, it's out of the ordinary. Well, I shouldn't say it's not out of the ordinary because it definitely is, but it wasn't like this is like incredibly unexpected.
All right, let's expand our conversation here. We'll bring in Lee Camp, host of Redacted Tonight, and also Robbie Starbuck. Oh, okay. Are we able to bring in Robbie? Is he with us at this point?
I just can't see your video.
Okay, great. Robbie, it's good to have you here. Yeah, so you've heard some of the conversation, I would assume, so far, and what we've been talking about. I mean, how do you view what we've seen so far, really in the last 24 hours? I mean, to the comment that was just made, this is an unprecedented moment. It's an unprecedented election. It's unprecedented in terms of the numbers, in terms of kind of the fallout of everyone who's come in on this. How do you see it?
I think most importantly, first, thanks for having me. I think most importantly, what's really unprecedented is the process. You look at a state like North Carolina where President Trump is clearly in the lead. It's clearly his state. He's clearly won it. But because they instituted a rule where you have to wait 9 days because they'll accept ballots up to 9 days later without a postmark, that's not normal in America. So I think that the process is what bothers me the most, because you look at it's not a coincidence to me that the states that are having trouble counting ballots are all states with Democrat governors who are the states that would be tipping points,
Well, except for Georgia, right? Because Georgia is a Republican state, and they can't seem to finish counting their votes for some reason.
I'm with you there. And the problem in Georgia is again, it's a Democrat-run area. County in Fulton, those counties, again, are run by Democrats. And same thing. So you may have missed this, but last night they said they were finished counting, and they told the Republican poll watchers and the people who were the lawyers there that everybody was going to bed for the night. And so they leave, and the Republicans find out that they went back in there and started counting ballots without any Republicans present last night.
I was not aware of this.
Yep.
I have not heard
Yeah,
that.
I would definitely substantiate that before you take it at face value.
Yeah, one of the lawyers for the Trump campaign came out early this morning, very upset about it, that they showed up and found out that they had been counting at night, presumably through the night, or came in early in the night and started counting without them there. So these are things, these are where the lawsuits are coming in. The Trump campaign actually just filed a lawsuit in Georgia that has to do partially with this issue. They have a lawsuit now in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Georgia. So I think, their mentality right now is to stop the steal.
So let me ask you this, and by the way, we mentioned off the top, yes, that Georgia has filed this lawsuit. In terms of the lawsuits, Robbie, let me stick with you for a minute, and then we'll come back. But in terms of these lawsuits, there's 3 lawsuits now. We're talking about Pennsylvania, we're talking about Michigan, and we're talking about Georgia. And that's just to begin. That we don't know whether or not there'll be others added to that as well. Go ahead.
There's one in Wisconsin too.
In Wisconsin as well. In all these places, the belief is there is a significant amount of irregularities. But the Trump campaign is going to have to prove irregularities, right? It can't just be, well, we heard about this. To the best of your knowledge, how much evidence is there that there are these actual irregularities, and have you seen documentation of them?
Yeah, so I'd say the best irregularities that they have documentation of is there's counties in a number of areas or a number of states where they actually have more votes than they do registered voters. That's an anomaly that you have to look at and you have to dig really deeply on. But the raw numbers and data is there showing that they had more votes than registered voters. That's not something you see. You look at a state, something, this isn't evidence, but it's something that they're digging deeper on. They're very curious about is in Wisconsin. Some of the percentages in terms of turnout are not making sense to them because you're looking at a 22% jump over the last election in terms of turnout in 2016. And, they had better turnout in 2016 than they did when Obama was elected, which everybody knows was a huge turnout election. So the percentages are worrying in that regard in Wisconsin. There doesn't really seem to be any other state that tracks along with it. Michigan does not track along with it in turnout. Neither does Pennsylvania. None of these states that you would look at and say, oh, they're probably somewhat similar, are similar in any regard in terms of turnout. So they're looking at things like that. But in terms of other things, there's definitely situations that, there's videos that they have and things like that. I don't want to put too much out there, but they do have things that they believe are going to be very, very, very crucial to proving that there were some real issues here.
I don't know.
Justin, let me talk about some of those videos. Let me let you respond to that, Justin.
Talk about some of those videos. Yeah. What else have you been seeing all day from right-wing pundits? And I've been. Go ahead. Hello.
Can you guys see me, by the way?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've been seeing a lot. I've been seeing a lot of right-wing pundits and a lot of media personalities just hardcore, like just baseless speculation, any sort of evidence they can possibly find. Like for example, there was that giant jump, and I think it was Wisconsin. I can't remember if it was Wisconsin or Michigan. I can bring it up real quick. Let's see. Yeah, in Michigan, there was a supposed like giant jump, and it turned out to be like an error, like this media company, not the pollsters, not the actual people counting the votes, but like this media company added a zero onto the end of like Biden's total in a single county, and it made his votes turn up. And then they took a screenshot of that, and then when they corrected it and it went down again, they took a screenshot of that. They flipped them to make it seem like we had this giant leap in votes in Michigan, and multiple people reported that as like proof that that there was something fishy going on with the votes. Like there's way too much for me to take anything seriously. I need to see some substantiated claims beyond just, I saw these two screenshots on Twitter. Or I had this unconfirmed report of like this person saying that Republicans are being cheated out in this, or a video of completely reasonable reactions to giant crowds forming at the windows of polling places. I am not seeing that. I think it's just people are trying to go crazy because this president has stirred. They put it into the public zeitgeist, especially for among his supporters, that if he loses, it cannot be because the public rejected him. that's physically not possible. And so, yeah, I'm worried about I'm definitely worried going forward that this is going to be an extremely contested election.
All right, let me bring in Lee Camp from Redactors Design. Thanks for joining us, Lee. What do you think about all this? Go ahead.
Oh, look, in terms of the two candidates, I don't really have a dog in this race. I think they're both, racist war criminals with sexual predators. So I'm not saying this is some kind of Biden lover or Trump lover, but it's just, the writing's on the wall. Biden, barely eked this thing out. The pollsters thought he was going to win by much more than he did. The reason those polls are always wrong, and I've said this for years, is because millions of people, mainly people of color, are purged from the voter rolls. Greg Palast, the investigative journalist, has done immense research into this. Last time around, it was upwards of 8 million. This time, it could be even close to that in battleground states. So that's why these polls never actually relate to the end result, because people, mainly people of color, think they're voting and their votes are thrown out. And so, but Biden's gonna, he's eking this out. He's barely winning, and it's hilarious to watch the right wing try and pretend this wasn't legit on there, because they like the last commentator. I'm sorry, I don't know the names. Was just saying is that is that there's really been no evidence of this as far as I've seen. It's people walking out and going, we don't even know what's happening in there. Well, it's just, civil servants counting votes and oh my God, we went to bed and then we woke up and there were different numbers on the screen. So it's pretty hilarious to watch them get all upset. But yeah, I mean, I think Biden's got it won.
Robbie, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of just like ludicrous statements in there. There's no evidence that purging voter rolls has anything to do with the difference in polling that we see. There's a reason why some of the best pollsters in this
of course it does. The polls were completely off, like they always are.
They're not including things like that. I would also say no evidence. Look at this.
I don't know what that means. You just said they're not including things like that?
Milwaukee wards report more presidential votes than registered voters. Okay, so I guess to you guys on the left, that's normal because you like dead people to vote. So Biden netted.
Nah, man, we just require this thing called evidence.
This is evidence. I can't straight from the voting wards. I don't know where they picked you two guys up, but you're not very smart.
No, it's not. You're I love it. It's always fun debating the right where they just they're like, there's 8 billion immigrants and they all voted in one precinct. They just make things up and then you're supposed to debate it as if it's some sort of proof.
I'm going to take
let's do this. Let's do this.
Take a leap of faith and guess that you're a white leftist because only white people talk about minorities like that, and I happen to be one. So outside of that,
I didn't
this
say
whole
anything negative about a minority.
It's normal to cover up
I didn't say anything negative at all.
This whole idea that it's normal to cover up windows at a voting precinct to stop people who are supposed to be there to watch the process from being able to watch the process, that's normal. Only a leftist could defend that type of behavior.
How did you know that video existed? I want you to tell me. How did you know that video existed?
What video
was
existed?
Was it taken with a camera? Were there cameras in that polling place showing you what was going on in it? Does that count as not being
covering?
How on earth there's keeping this crowd trying to ram their way in?
Counting ballots.
Yeah. Do you think that random citizens off the street, do you think it's their job to ensure the integrity of our election process? Or do you think there are dedicated officials for that?
We have polls on the ground who have been blocked from access to reading this. I've talked to them. We literally have lawyers on the ground who are working with them, trying to get them in there, who are filing lawsuits in all of these states. I don't know what planet you're on.
I don't know, man. I have 95 friends, and every single one of them, when they went to the polling places, the Republicans were out in force just screaming at them, telling them to vote Trump and scaring them off with rifles. That's exactly what happened. And, until I prove it, I guess we're just going to have to take my word for it, right?
I mean, you're just straight up lunatic.
Hold on, guys. Hold on.
There is not one case of somebody with a rifle chasing people around to stop them from voting. Honestly,
really? So you would need evidence
to show. Great. If not, I'm out of here because I'm not here to be part of a Looney Tunes show with these idiots. Nobody's chasing people around with rifles to stop them from voting.
No, they're not.
So here's what I'd like to do, guys. Hold on for just a second. Take a breath, everyone. So one of the issues with Skype, by the way, is that when everyone starts talking, we don't hear anybody. So it just all kind of blurs out. So I'd love for you guys to debate each other, but you got to be able to do it one at a time, please. Secondly, let's try to refocus here for a minute, because the issue is whether or not these lawsuits that are going forward are based in any merit. I don't think they'll go anywhere. But whether or not a lawsuit goes anywhere, it doesn't have anything to do with whether it has merit or not. So the question is, are there legitimate irregularities that are taking place here? And Lee, let me go back to you for a minute. You said you don't have a dog in this fight. So we're watching something with Biden that I think is pretty interesting. 70 million votes that have been cast for him, more than Obama in 2008. For a candidate who didn't seem like he was wildly popular. Now, according to exit polls, if you believe that, 30% of the people voting for him weren't even voting for him. They were voting against Trump. Do you think there's anything irregular that you've seen that indicates that voting wasn't above board completely? Or do you think it's just a matter of a lot of people came out and voted, and so we're dealing with a huge crush of people?
I mean, the reason a lot of people voted is because, yeah, Trump's incredibly unpopular. And also, the media has talked about nothing but Trump for the past 4 years. So it's on everybody's brains. Whereas when you have other presidents, it's like, yeah, they're in the news a lot, but they're not in the news like Trump. I mean, it has been the Trump show for 4 straight years. So the fact that there's been a lot of voters should not really surprise anyone. On top of that, because people were encouraged to vote by mail or vote early in order to not wait in lines during COVID-19, it made it easier for a lot of people to vote. I mean, I've been saying for years that, America should have a voting holiday. There's no people who have to work can't just take 4 hours off to stand in line on a Tuesday. And so you had a lot of people voting for the first time or voting, more. They have an easier time voting than in the past because a lot of people work on a Tuesday. The fact that there's been large numbers seems totally feasible. And like I said, the most obvious thing is that all these polls saying Biden was leading by 5 points here and 5 points there, and then he is going to win this thing, but it's by a half a percentage point or a percentage point here and there, is because of the massive purge of voting. Some of it the Supreme Court upheld. So, for example, in Ohio, 1.2 million postcards were sent out a few years ago, basically saying, if you haven't moved, return this postcard. Most people don't return them because they don't see them, they don't care about them. I mean, it's a postcard. Most people don't give a shit about a postcard. So then they don't return them, and then they get purged from the rolls. This is common practice. It's called caging. It's an old technique, and it's been upheld in certain areas to do it. So people are purged from the rolls. That explains the difference in the polls. And I mean, Biden's going to win this thing, and there's been no evidence of some sort of large-scale fraud. And also, I called all this, and many people did. I'm not the only one, but I called all this in mid-August. I tweeted out that Trump wanted to say everyone of his fans should vote on the day of. All the other votes should come in by mail, and then he'd try and stop the mail count from actually counting, which is exactly what happened, and he declared victory like I said he would. And all this could be predicted if you just understand how these characters work.
So let me ask you this, Robbie. So setting aside whether or not you think that they should happen in terms of the lawsuits, or whether you think they should take place, do you think they will? Because obviously there's a big difference there. There's a huge difference between whether or not the court will act in a way that you hope they will versus what they will actually do. What are the chances, do you think, that this will actually, these lawsuits will have enough merit or get enough traction, they can actually stop the counting, number one? And number two, what are the chances you think that will happen before you get Nevada or some state like that called and you get the big declaration that Biden's hit his magic number?
I don't know that they're going to stop the voting, but I do think where this is going to end up eventually is at the Supreme Court, where they're going to have to talk about the postmarks, the signatures, matching up, all that stuff, verifying each voter. I think that's really the end game. But you look at, say, Arizona. Arizona was called by Fox and AP for Biden, but Maricopa County, they announced that they had hundreds of thousands of votes that were not included in the number that Fox and AP were assuming was left out there in the vote. So you go through that, even the governor of Arizona, he's put out there that this very well could flip to Trump. Arizona flips to Trump, and if Trump holds on to Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina, he's over 270.
I'm just curious.
Yeah,
you do want them to
absolutely,
keep counting in Arizona, right? Like
What?
the lawsuits are trying to stop them from counting in certain other states, but you want them to keep counting in Arizona.
So
Right?
in Arizona, we're talking about election day votes that they haven't counted yet. That's what we're talking about. In Georgia, they're talking about votes that have come in. What they've asked to stop is they have these ballot boxes where they drop things, and the stuff that's not postmarked, wasn't postmarked on time, or votes that came in after the clock ran out. That's the stuff they're asking to stop the count so that those can be moved to a different pile, basically, from the other stuff. This was the same lawsuit, basically, that they tried. Somebody who was running for Congress, I don't remember who it was, tried in Pennsylvania because they wanted everything separated. In Arizona, it's not an issue because they didn't allow anything that would come after that. So they don't have to go looking for that same sort of predicate to do this.
Justin, let me give you a final word here. We're about to rotate the panel here. Your final word this evening on this.
Okay, it looks like no one's going to be happy with the result of this election. All right, so if it makes you feel better, everybody's going to be miserable after this. Okay, so we can all come together and commiserate. I think we need to really. If to get past this, we can't have baseless speculation on what went wrong. You can't just make these baseless accusations that the system is rigged, that things are being stolen from you. You have to back it up with solid evidence. I want every single vote to be counted, all of them. And you know what? A lot of those votes are going to be Republican, and that's how the system should be. That's how it should be. It should be honest. That's how we keep the system honest. So I want every single vote to be counted, Democrat and Republican alike, and even the brave souls who voted third party. I even want their vote counted because I have a little bit of integrity, and I want any sort of accusation to be backed up with solid data, and I welcome any sort of investigation that comes after it. All right, if you find stuff, I want it to be found just like anyone else.
All right, Justin, thanks so much. We're going to rotate now and bring in Tanner Roberts.